And something that I love about hibiscus is that it's very clearing. It encourages movement in the body. It's antimicrobial. It has a lot of vitamin C, so it's really great for that immune system. I think for me, that cardiovascular health and the high amounts of vitamin C for me are like really, really the two ways that I love using it outside of for respiratory health. It's really something I just grew up around and I love so much.
Welcome to the Herbs with Rosalee podcast, a show exploring how herbs heal as medicine, as food, and through connecting with the living world around you. Well, most of us meet hibiscus as something pretty. I mean, it's pink, right? And it's tart in a glass, and that alone is reason enough to love it. But there's more going on in those ruby calyxes than a refreshing summer drink. In this episode, Rebecca Fils-Aimé shares hibiscus as she grew up with it, the national flower of Haiti, a plant carried across the diaspora and given a different name in nearly every place it landed. She talks about the cooling, moistening qualities that make it so satisfying on a hot day, and then takes it somewhere you might not expect, into the lungs and throat, where hibiscus and a handful of Caribbean spices become a syrup for the kind of dry, persistent cough that can be so annoying. Well, by the end of this conversation, you'll have a fuller sense of what this familiar flower is capable of, and probably a longing for a tall pink glass of it. Please remember, if you enjoy this episode, give it a thumbs up so more plant lovers can find us, and be sure to stay tuned to the very end for your herbal tidbit. Also, please leave me your comments. I read every single one of them, and I love them. Rebecca, I'm so thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear your story. We've already been connecting on our hard to pronounce French last names. So We've got that going for us. And you've chosen a very favorite herb of mine. So really excited to deep dive into hibiscus as well. And as always, I want to start with you. What has brought you here today? How have the plants reached out and chosen you?
I love this question. Honestly, I have just so many early memories of being in the garden with my grandparents, and being in the kitchen with my grandma and my mother. My family is originally from Haiti, and when they emigrated over, they went to New York and then Florida. So luckily in South Florida, very similar environment as back in Haiti. So they were able to grow a lot of the same herbs and fruits and things in their backyard. So I'd be in the backyard harvesting with my grandfather, then we'd bring it inside, and then me and my grandma would sit and like process and break things down. So I think between that and just, Haitian culture is a culture where it's very commonplace to go into the backyard, grab some leaves, make tea, or, ginger or peppermint are like go-to herbs if your stomach is feeling a little off or something like that. And even in the food, we have like this herb-based, aromatic-based seasoning blend called épices that we put in almost all of our food. So I feel like between the garden and the food, that just really gave me like kind of like what I call like a base level knowledge of, different Caribbean herbalism practices and how it overlaps into the kitchen as well.
I have a question for you, if you don't mind me interrupting.
Yeah.
Was that like happy experiences, like the, being with your grandparents and preparing stuff? Because sometimes as kids, we're like, it's a chore or, something. So yeah, you're nodding your head. Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah. Yeah. And I credit that to why I still love cooking even today, and why kitchen herbalism is really like what I think is the way that I practice herbalism primarily, because I grew up in the kitchen and I grew up in their garden. Even in their front yard where there's a lot of grass, like me and my older sister would just be taking blades of grass and like mashing it up and making quote unquote remedies and, things like that. So very, very happy memories. And I think I carried that with me throughout my life. Then in middle school and high school, I started really thinking about my interest in health. I was in middle school and I'll never forget this. I had to do this summer project. And there were a bunch of options I could choose from. And I'm like 13-year-old thinking, I want to do something on the digestive system. And that just always stuck with me. And I thought I was going to be a gastroenterologist. Like I was just really into the digestive system when I was younger. And then fast forward to my junior year in college, I'm a biology major,
Hmm.
which is great because it's not just, anatomy and physiology, but I'm learning a lot about plants and, microbiology and like all these things that like my inner nerd just really loved. Um, and I realized my senior year, last minute, like I had already applied to medical schools and was setting up interviews. And I realized I don't think I actually want to be a doctor. I know I want to help people
Hmm.
and I know I want to be in the health world somehow. But I don't think this is what I want to do.
Hmm.
I did some research and ended up going into public health instead. And so that's what I do now. And I think, this could be a whole nother episode topic, but I think there are a lot of overlaps between herbalism and the way that I learned to practice public health, community centered public health. So I really feel like that just continued to like stoke the flame of interest in different ways to approach health. And then the same thing with cooking. Throughout that time, I really grew my cooking skills. I had, my friends would love to come over and just eat some food when we were in college. I still lived at home because the college I went to was 10 minutes away. So, or we would all get together and cook regularly. I was also getting really deep into taking care of my personal health at the time. So I was eating a lot of whole foods and drinking a lot of teas that are well known in like Haitian culture and Caribbean culture in general, like moringa tea, eating a lot of leafy greens, a lot of those tropical fruits that have like all those antioxidants and fiber. And of course, hibiscus, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Um, and so, yeah, I think just that experience of being in that culture of, go and get some herbs if things aren't feeling that great. And then also having a culture where herbs in food is a big thing. We put
Mm-hmm.
that marinade epice in almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really just how I got here. I started formalizing my herbalism study, I would say probably like 2017. When I left Florida to where I am now in Georgia, I had real seasons to start dealing with. And that made me really get into seasonal like living and seasonal herbalism and embracing the cold weather, because it was relatively new for me. I was born in New York, but I was really, really young when we left and moved to Florida. So that cold was very much a thing that I had to get used to. Um, and yeah, I think the pandemic happened. So we were all in the house and I just got deeper and deeper into that study, and started making medicine for my community. Just, my coworkers, people who live near me, anyone who just asked me for anything, I would ask them some questions just to get a bit more information about like, what do you need support with? Get a little bit of their constitution, their likes, their dislikes, and then share things with them. And to this day, I still share herbal teas or herbal steam blends seem to be really popular amongst people that reach out to me. And every August, I make this huge half-gallon jar of this like elderberry, mullein, nettle, what I call elixir, and I just give it out for free. My coworkers already know once it's like end of August, they're like, "Hey, Rebecca, could you get me some of that that
Nice.
elixir that you made?" So that was just my long-winded way of saying I think I grew up with a lot of it. And then as I got older, being intentional about doing more studying, taking classes, self-study. I do the plant of the month thing, studying a different plant in depth every month.
Nice.
Um, and then I started herbal writing a few years ago, and I think that's where I am now. I've written a lot for like learning herbs and botanical anthology and a couple of other places. So that's how I got here.
Nice. Hey there. Just a quick note. If you'd like to hear from me in a more personal way, I'd love to have you in my free text community. I send a couple of texts every week, things like behind the scenes updates, herbal thoughts that I'm chewing on, and little sparks of joy I don't always share anywhere else. To join, just text the word root to 1-509-383-8398. And if you ever want to break up, no hard feelings. Just text STOP to the same number and you'll be opted out immediately. My goal is to make it so juicy and so fun that you look forward to getting my texts each week. Okay, now back to the show. when I was looking at your Instagram, I was seeing you'd been interviewed for one of my favorite fruits, which I have a deep longing for because I can't ever find it where I live, and that's guanabana. Or
Oh, yes, yes,
what
yes,
is it also
yes.
called? It's
Sour sop.
soursop.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
lived in the Dominican Republic for a time, and so that's where I fell in love with guanabana. And
So
now I
good.
can find it canned, but it's like gross.
Mm-hmm.
Can't, it's so sweet. Like it's already such a sweet fruit, and then to like
Right.
can it with sweetness. Oh, I miss it so much. That piqued my interest. The guanabana.
It's so
Um,
good.
so the question that's lingering in my mind is just about the public health. If we could circle back to that, because you're saying like there's a lot of overlap there, and you're in public health now. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? What do you do in that realm?
So there's a lot that you can do in public health. And so what I do is I help community-based organizations, whether they need to collect data for their funder or they just want to get information that helps them know, is their program working? Are they reaching community as intended? So I'll come in and I'm the one helping them with that data process. So still that like nerdy part of me that likes the numbers and also being able to be in community and talking to people, like, doing interviews or focus groups or just getting information from people directly in community to see whether these programs are impacting them as intended. And then if they aren't, then I work with that organization to like give them recommendations based on what people are saying on how they can maybe improve their program so it can do the thing that they wanted to do and have the impact and community that they wanted to have.
Oh, that's cool. I have a friend who does something similar, but with nonprofits. But I always often think of her
Mm-hmm.
as like kind of like the fix it person, like goes in and sees what can be helped and like helps an
Mm-hmm.
organization. Because oftentimes people have like desire to help, or they have a
Right.
vision, but they aren't necessarily like they don't know all the ins and outs of what does it
Yeah.
take, especially as organizations grow. Things shift so much.
Exactly. And another part of my job is training organizations to learn how to
Mhm.
do those things.
Yeah.
Like I always say, like my role is not to be here forever. I want to help you out with the thing you need help with, and then let's find a way to build your capacity so that you can do this on your own, whether it's on a different scale or we help you figure out a way to hire someone at your organization that can do that work. So yeah, definitely that training piece is important as well.
Cool. That's kind of like herbalism too. Like
Right,
so many
exactly.
herbalists are like, here's how you make the tea, that sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah, lovely.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing your story with us. I love that you had it at such a young age, that just like the modeling, and that it stuck with you in a good way. Sometimes I feel like, because I see now like my friends as parents, like their kids, it's so normal and natural to them to have herbs that it's not like
Mhm.
special like the way it is to many of us who
Right.
had to like find it and cultivate it and like dive into it. It's just
Mhm.
normal, so which is cool. It's
It
cool that that
is,
is, but sometimes it's like taken for granted, I guess.
for sure, for sure.
And
And
which
I
is
think
good, which is good.
and
It
I
should
think
be.
too, even though I was raised around it, there's still people who like it's different by person, right? So like talking to my grandmother, she has a lot of memories and just a lot of information that she can share. But I'm sure, and there are a lot of other elders in my family as well who are like that, who can like recount, like, oh, when we were in Haiti and we had this tree and it was just on the road, like, it was a neighbor's tree or. So it's that what I love is that feeling of like nobody owns this. Like this is the community's tree, the community's medicine, and we just knew where it
Yeah.
was when we needed it.
I love that.
But there are some people who grew up around it and just didn't really absorb that. Like they know that okay, my mom goes into the backyard and gets leaves, but that doesn't mean they know what they're drinking. They just know their mom is that person who will say drink this when you're not feeling
Right,
well.
right.
So it definitely ranges by person, I think, but it is when we think about like the culture in itself, I think Haitian culture and I would say Caribbean culture at large definitely has that underlying like thread of
Mhm.
herbs and herbalism in particular for like preventative measures.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, that's lovely. Well, thanks again. And thank you for choosing hibiscus. I'm truly excited for hibiscus. One of my favorite plants, most worked with plants. Yeah, I'm curious why you chose hibiscus for today.
So it's also one of my favorite plants. Hibiscus is actually the national flower of Haiti. So it
Nice.
is something that I grew up around a lot, and there are a lot of other countries in the Caribbean that use the calyx of Hibiscus sabdariffa to make drinks that they drink during the holiday season. It's a drink called sorrel, which is where my cough syrup was inspired from. But So I just grew up around it. You know, there are so many species of hibiscus. I think there's like over 300 at this point. And a lot of them are important to Caribbean culture. I
Hmm.
mean, a lot, you know, the sabdariffa species in particular came to us from Africa. And I think it's a plant that, like, Black people in particular have taken with us throughout the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
You can go through a lot of different Black cultures and Black ethnicities, and they all have a different name for their hibiscus based drink, but there are a lot of similarities in how they make it. There are, you definitely have the hibiscus. There's usually some variation of a lot of spices. So sometimes it can be clove, allspice, nutmeg, cinnamon in the drink. Sometimes they'll put pineapple, citrus,
Ooh.
mint. So yeah, there's a lot of different like variations of it, but for the most part, you're gonna get that hibiscus in it and at least some kind of spice, maybe even a ginger. I know that's also very popular. So it's really something I just grew up around and I love so much.
Mm-hmm.
There are also some that are native to different islands in the Caribbean too. So I think
Oh, yeah.
between, but the sabdariffa definitely comes to us from Africa, but there are other species as well, and all of them, because they're part of the Malvaceae family, have that mucilage quality when fresh, in the flowers and in the leaves. And that is, I think, one of the most prized parts of that plant in the Caribbean. I've seen people, you know, take the flowers and the leaves and, like, you know, mash it up to get that mucilage and use it to like wash their hair.
Mm.
I know some people use the powdered calyx of Hibiscus sabdariffa as like face or skincare. I
Mm.
myself have used it in a face mask before because
Mm.
it's like really nourishing and it's brightening, so it's really good topically as well. And so yeah, I just have a love for the flower in itself, a love for the plant. If you like look at like Haitian art, you'll probably see the flower on like our clothing in some points, or like even in the art itself, like paintings and literature. So it means a lot to Haitian people in particular as a sign of like beauty, but also resilience.
Mm. And is it called sorrel in Haitian, in Creole, or
No,
no?
so that's in the English speaking countries, they'll call it sorrel, and so we call it chou block.
Shoe block. I haven't heard
Yes.
that before.
Yeah. I think
Oh.
we're one of the few that calls it that. And it's inspired. My understanding is that there are other countries that have a similar way of saying it. But when they're talking about the drink, they'll say sorrel. But sometimes people will just say sorrel when they're talking about the plant too. So it's one of those
Mm-hmm.
things where just using context clues, are they talking about the drink or they're just
Mm-hmm.
talking about hibiscus in itself?
Yeah. And then it's in a lot of the Caribbean, it's called jamaica, which I don't know
Yeah.
if that is
Mm-hmm.
directly imported from Jamaica.
Jamaica. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
is. Okay.
In the Spanish speaking Caribbean, yeah, for sure. It
Okay.
has
So it's more
a lot
Spanish
of
speaking.
names.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know in Mexico too, they call it agua de Jamaica as
Yeah.
well. Hmm.
Yeah, when I've spent a lot of time in Mexico, and that's like my drink of choice when I'm there, and I
It's
just
so
know like to
refreshing.
ask for jamaica sin azúcar because they love their sugar in
They
the
do.
jamaica. It's more like a syrup. Like you're like, whoa. So or I say poco azúcar because a little bit of sugar is fine with the
Yeah,
hibiscus. It can be super tart without
it can.
anything. So
Hmm.
yeah, poco de azúcar, but not a lot. But it is like, I mean, when it's hot out, it is for me, it's the most refreshing drink that is just like on so many levels. It just feels right.
Absolutely. It's cooling and refreshing. It's that sour aspect of it in the taste, but
Mm-hmm.
also it acts as a refrigerant in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense, right? When you think about all the places where it's native to, like that subtropical environment, you need something to help you cool down. And so a lot of plants, but definitely hibiscus, have that like cooling aspect to them.
Yeah. And then it makes everything pink, so it kind of makes everything
And it's
better.
so pretty. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actual science right there.
I love it.
I actually just made hibiscus tea today. It's 100 degrees today, and where I live, it's very arid, and so
Mm,
hibiscus, just like that mucilaginous quality, has a whole other level of thank you with it.
yes.
So
Yes.
yeah,
And I love that feeling of it's almost like a different level of refreshing because it's not just cooling you down, but when it has that mucilage in it, it's also like your insides are super happy about it.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Hey friends, it's Rosalee. If you've been nourished by this podcast, If it's helped you feel more connected to the plants or more grounded in your own herbal path, then I'd love to invite you to join the Herbs with Rosalee podcast circle. This special membership helps make the podcast possible. It supports everything we do behind the scenes, and it gives you a chance to go even deeper with the content that you love. Inside the circle, you'll get exclusive herbal resources, live classes each season with some of my favorite herbal teachers, and a private space to connect with fellow plant lovers. It's where the heart of our herbal community continues to grow. To learn more and join us, visit herbalpodcastcircle.com. Your support means the world, and it helps this podcast continue to bloom. So with hibiscus, like one thing I would say about it is like I reach for hibiscus all the time in the hot months. Like it's such a soothing, relieving plant. I will actually reach for it when I want something to be pink. Like I'll, just that I will admit to that superficiality. I don't work with hibiscus a lot as specifically as medicine. And so it was great to see your cough syrup recipe come in, working with this plant and spices, specifically in a more medicinal type variety. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about your recipe, and I'll let folks know how they can get it when you're done talking about it too.
Yeah. So, to your point about, because I agree with you. Growing up, I knew that people used it medicinally, but I was just used to having it in like sorrel or like in a drink of some sort. And so through my studies and also talking to some of my elders, the words are not always going to be the super scientific, like antimicrobial, right? But elders did and still do recognize that there is a health aspect to consuming hibiscus. And so it's antimicrobial. It has a lot of vitamin C, so it's really great for that immune system. And something that I love about hibiscus is that it's very clearing. It encourages movement in the body.
Mm.
And so I feel like it does a really good job of moving mucus in the lungs. That soothing aspect that we talked about is also really good if you have a little bit of a sore throat. And I think overall, to me, this recipe is really good for if you just have that dry, unproductive cough. And it's not spastic per se, but it's definitely persistent to the point where the cough itself is causing some of that irritation. I think it's really, really good for that. And then you have these other herbs and spices that also help with the dry cough. It helps restore the mucosa that is causing that, irritation in your throat or just in general in the upper respiratory system. And so it also works to make sure that you're not necessarily suppressing the cough, but it's getting it to a point where it's not as irritating. It's not causing that irritation in the throat. And that if you are having coughing fits, they're not as painful. And they can actually be a little more productive too, because a lot of times that cough is there's mucus stuck that can't get out. And so there are some expectorant spices in this mix with the cloves and the star anise and the ginger. And I think, adding a little bit more vitamin C with the orange peel, that's really how this all came together. A lot of these ingredients, like I mentioned earlier, are in a sorrel drink. Or just a variation of whichever drink you're, thinking about, whether it's the one from Nigeria or there's, a lot of different variations. But I wanted to make sure that the spices I chose reflected the uniqueness of the Caribbean style of, making this hibiscus drink. And I think a lot of times when people think of Caribbean food, the spice part of it, like not spiciness, like I'm sure a lot of people know food can be spicy, but using spices in our food, I feel like sometimes people don't realize how much we do that outside of maybe like a jerk seasoning or something. But we use a lot of spices in our food and also as an herbal remedy. So this recipe is really a love letter to that. And also when I had a cough and I had hibiscus on hand and I wanted to try it on myself and it worked really well.
Love that. How you're describing hibiscus is exactly how I work with linden, which they're very similar.
Exactly. Yeah.
In that way. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and then the spices, of course, just add that specialness. And I love the allspice, the cloves. I mean, it's really a nice, invigorating blend. And for folks who want to download the Sorrel Cough Syrup, you can go to herbswithrosaleepodcast.com or check out the show notes. We have a beautifully illustrated recipe card with Rebecca's recipe in there. And I love that it's like I always love the simple recipes. It's such a simple recipe that you have here. So it's just like a one pot wonder, and then you have this
Hmm.
amazing, delicious, effective cough syrup. Voila.
I love
That's
simplicity. I think
herbalism.
I exactly. I think the more simple you can make it, the more approachable it is, and it makes people not feel as intimidated. There's definitely a time and a place. If you know, if you have a complex, concern or a situation, then we have to bring in a lot of different herbs. But I think in this case, these are things that I typically have on hand, and
Mhm.
so it was just easy for me to put it all in a pot, let the spices boil, take it off the heat, let the hibiscus steep, and then strain it. And now we're gonna add that honey to really thicken it up a little bit and make
Mm,
it more of a syrup.
lovely. One thing that I love when I go to Mexico is like pretty much if Jamaica hibiscus is on the menu, I'm getting it. And it can be like there's all these different, it'll be like hibiscus jam, hibiscus
Mm-hmm.
margarita, like whatever it is, I'm gonna get the hibiscus thing. And so one thing that I fell in love with is like you can often eat hibiscus there. And I was telling my chosen family down there, Lily, I was like, oh, it's so, I wish we could get fresh hibiscus where I live, but I've tried growing it in the garden. I get like this much, it's just not the climate for hibiscus. And I said, "Oh, I just love the, like, actual eating of the hibiscus calyx, it's so delicious." And she's like, "Oh, this isn't fresh, it's just rehydrated. It's all rehydrated."
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
this is such a, like, embarrassing thing to admit, but, ever since then, I've been like, "I gotta do that." And then I just forget, you know? Is that something do you ever rehydrate the hibiscus or have hibiscus fresh or eat hibiscus? Is that something that you do?
I have, yeah. I like to use whether it's I think it's better for this purpose when it's fresh, but making a jam, that fresh
Mm,
calyx has a lot of pectin.
yeah.
So you can make a jam with hibiscus and you don't have to use a lot of sugar, but I would because it's very tart.
Yep.
Um add some citrus, add some sugar and like let it cook down and it turns into a beautiful jam with that natural pectin that it has in it.
Mhm.
I have not tried that with rehydrated hibiscus, but I have used rehydrated hibiscus before. And I feel like I've heard you mentioned Mexico. I feel like I've heard of them like using it in actual like dishes that are savory.
Yeah, so the one time
Yeah.
I had it, like, one that in memory, it was, like, hibiscus and mushrooms and onions, and it was, like, a salty, delicious
Yeah,
thing.
that's amazing. I
Yeah.
think that's amazing. I would love to try that. I have
Me
not
too. Why do I
tried
keep
that.
talking about it without doing it? I don't know. I need to, like, have this hold me accountable or something. Enough enough wishing. We gotta get into the
I need
doing
to go
phase.
to Mexico and find that. That sounds delicious. I would love to just experience it and think about the differences between how I've had it before and
Yeah.
how I'm having it in that moment.
Yeah, I remember I went to this, like, French Mexican fusion, bistro or
Ooh.
whatever, and they had it was like goat cheese crepes that
Mhm.
then had that like, what you're describing as the hibiscus jam was just, like, smothered on top of it. It was
Wow.
so beautiful and, yeah, so much fun. I'm sure that must have been fresh, but it was like I went there one morning, and they said that they were all out of the hibiscus, like, they'd used it up, and so I
Mhm.
went earlier the next morning and got it, but it was I got the sense that they were, like, making it that day or something, like, it was like they only had
Wow.
so much for the day. So yeah, so yummy.
I love that. Oh my gosh, now I have to plan a trip.
And it was also so ubiquitous there, go to the markets and there were just, at the booths at the market, there would just be bags, like, loads and heaps of hibiscus everywhere, and that was a fun thing as well, just like, oh, it's so common, so abundant, so wonderful. Yeah, so many
Yeah.
reasons to love hibiscus.
And I think anywhere that you go where there's a lot of Caribbean people, you'll find something similar. Because even it doesn't grow there, but even in New York, I know people who can go to a certain market and just get a bag of hibiscus, and it's
Mm.
regular for them. It's part of their regular grocery list. Same thing, of course, in South Florida. But I think down there it also grows pretty well too because of the
Mm.
environment.
Oh my gosh, I would love to be around lots of it because I hear all like working with the leaves and then
Oh
the fresh
yeah.
calyx and
Mm-hmm.
I should try growing it again. I've grown as an herbal or as a gardener since then, but yeah, still not quite the climate for the sabdariffa. One
Yeah.
day.
The leaves are also really good too in terms of so I know they have a lot of nutrition. And so some Caribbean islands will use it as a green and they'll put it in like a
Mm.
stew or a soup or even eat it raw in a salad. And I've also seen folks use it as a bath tea, or they might use it as like a vaginal
Mm.
steam, like
Mm.
postpartum. So the leaves definitely have a lot of medicine as well.
Hmm. Gosh, these, what I'm just thinking about right now, Rebecca, is just these plants that become such good friends to humans. Like you're saying, like the African diaspora has moved this plant all around, and then it still remains so culturally important through the ages. And it has this abundance to it that still is not only in the way it grows and the way we can have this abundance of it, but it's abundantly in the culture, worked with in so many different ways, from food to medicine. I mean, it's just like it's one of our besties.
It
It's this
is. It is.
fantastic plant.
It is. It's to the point where, so in African American culture, there's this thing called red drink. And a lot of historians say that, hibiscus doesn't necessarily grow well in a lot of places in the South, but them having that like red drink during celebratory events or holidays is like reminiscent of
Mm.
the hibiscus. So even though they've, African Americans have been here for so long, they're still part of that in that way because they're still honoring that plant, even though they couldn't have it, right? Like that creativity, that remembrance is amazing to me, to be able to say, we can't have that, but how can we still honor that in our
Mm.
celebratory events?
That's beautiful. Yeah. Ah, hibiscus.
I know.
Um, are there other ways that you like to work with hibiscus, or anything else you'd like to share about this lovely plant? Oh, you know what I'd love
One,
to talk, actually. Sorry to
no,
interrupt you.
no, yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, so as a very young herbalist, I was very confused about, like I saw the red hibiscus flowers and I was like, "Oh, that's hibiscus." And I didn't realize, and still people talk about hibiscus flowers. We like use hibiscus flowers. Would you talk a little bit about the botany of hibiscus? And I'm sure we can put B-roll on of just like what exactly are we talking about when we say we're working with hibiscus?
Yeah, so we have the flower and then we have the leaves. And to my knowledge, I believe the Hibiscus sabdariffa that we're talking about is the only one that has that red calyx. So anytime you see that calyx, it's that very specific Hibiscus sabdariffa. But like I mentioned earlier, all of them being part of that Malvaceae family have that mucilage. A lot of them have the same antimicrobial impacts as well, anti-inflammation. And then I think an underrated way to use hibiscus is for digestive concerns. We also know, like, I think this is kind of like a general thing. Like, if it's red, it probably helps with cardiovascular health. That is definitely true for hibiscus, similar to like hawthorn in that way, where it really helps lower that blood pressure. My mom was just telling me the other day, actually, that she's been drinking hibiscus every day for a while, and she went to the doctor, and there were visible differences in her blood pressure. It wasn't
Oh.
super high, but it was a change from what she normally had. So she wanted to try to get it down without having to be on any medication or anything. So I think for me, that cardiovascular health and the high amounts of vitamin C for me are like really, really the two ways that I love using it outside of for respiratory health. I feel like the respiratory health thing I discovered in my research and testing on myself. But those other things, like I kind of grew up thinking about it in that way, like that vitamin C in particular, whether it's for preventative health and just wanting to get vitamin C to boost your immune system, or if you're not feeling well, you want to get vitamin C. I personally get tired of orange juice and things like that.
Mhm.
So having that as another option was always really helpful for me personally.
Oh, it's lovely. Yeah, speaking of the hawthorn, that's actually a favorite combination for me is hibiscus and hawthorn.
I
And
love
then
it.
like a classic one for me is then also rose hips on top of that. And
Oh,
it's just like those
yes.
three red berries, I just feel like are just wonderful, even like preventive, just nourishment for the heart. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would love, you mentioned linden, and that made me think, I don't think I've tried them together. So now I have to see, I might have to do some more experimenting to see how I like that.
Yeah, yeah, lovely combination because you got like kind of that floral aromatics of the linden,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of that, yeah, that double mucilage is very nice. Yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. For
I love
sure.
that about how it just helps supported your mom's blood pressure. Like just the way, it's like, oh, like we don't have a lot of plants that are going to act like really, pharmaceutical blood pressure medication, but we do have plants that are incredibly nourishing and make a difference, like
They
hibiscus.
do. They do.
Yeah.
And she's used to hawthorn. She's tried hawthorn before, and she, for a different reason, more for its nervine
Mm.
capabilities. And so she has that, but she was just like, you know what? I think I just want hibiscus. Like, that's
Nice.
just what's natural to me. I always
Yeah.
have it. Like I mentioned, it's always, it's somewhere in the cupboard.
Yeah.
So when she told me that, I was really happy because she did not consult me, even, that is not part of our agreement. Usually she consults me first. But I think this one was just so natural to her, and she was so used to it that she was
Mm.
just ready to try it on her own without having to consult me.
Nice, nice. Yay, hibiscus. I know hibiscus, in Mexico, it's often touted for its ability to address, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
always kind of, like, makes me wonder a bit because every time I see people drinking jamaica in Mexico, it's with, like, a lot of sugar. So I'm always just kind of like, "How is that working necessarily?" I'm not sure, but it's very, like, highly regarded. Like, people will tell you that all the time. Like, I feel like everybody just knows that, like,
Yeah,
hibiscus.
I have heard that too. And
Yeah.
but I agree with you. I think with that sorrel drink, a lot of times it has a lot of sugar in it, to the point where I think sometimes some of the elders are like, you can have some, but not too much,
Mm.
trying to manage your sugar consumption. I would love to excuse me, I would love to learn more about the type 2 diabetes aspect of it, because I have heard of that. I
Mm.
just have not personally used it in that way. But I've definitely heard of it being used that way.
Yeah, I could see maybe, perhaps another preparation would be that, mushroom, onion, garlic, like, kind of a savory thing that you could eat it and not be, like, dealing with,
Yeah.
like, all the sugar.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. I think
Alright.
that would be awesome. Even if you have it in that jam, like you mentioned with the crepe, even the jam itself might have a lot of sugar, but you're not using, the whole pot of jam. So
Right.
even
I mean,
eating
you'd
it in
want
that
to
way.
because it's so good. It's hard not to.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your love of hibiscus with us and for the cough syrup recipe, which looks absolutely delicious as well as effective. All of it's so lovely. And I'm just, yeah, so excited to have hibiscus on the show finally. So thank you so much for bringing that.
You're so
And
welcome.
yeah, if you have anything else to share about hibiscus, feel free. But if not, I'd love to hear what's going on in your herbal world these days. Like, what projects are you working on? What's up for you?
I think the only other thing I want to mention about
Mm.
the syrup is you can use it the way it's intended. You can also just use it to make a nice, tasty, and pretty beverage with some sparkling water. I've added it to my hot tea as like the sweetener. So instead of using
Mm.
a plain honey or something, I just have it on hand, and it also turns the tea a beautiful pink color, like we were talking about earlier. So it's definitely versatile in how you can use this syrup, but having it on hand in particular, like towards the end of the summer when you're like preparing for fall and potential like sick season and the changing seasons, I think it's a good thing to make and have on hand just in case. And if you don't need
Mm.
it, for a cough, then drink it with your tea.
Yeah, I was planning on making this as a enjoyable beverage, so I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Yes,
It looks incredible.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
I like your idea of adding it as a sweetener too, as a, in teas and stuff, because that's lovely.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
So what's going on in my herbal world? I have a lot going on in the sense that I recently started volunteering with a local herbalism clinic.
Hmm.
And so that is keeping me busy between like actually volunteering with them and participating in all the classes. And we have like a book club as well.
Oh, cool.
So that is awesome. And then I'm relaunching my blog. Really,
Nice.
really excited about that. I initially had it a few years ago, and then life happened and I got really busy. So there was no official like big like launch of it. I just had it and I shared it with some people, and then I took it offline, and so I've been really working to get it to a place where I want to share it again. And so we're almost there. Just need to work out a few things with the logo, and it'll be ready to share with everyone.
Oh, nice. And what kind of writing do you do on the blog? I'm assuming like
On the
herbal and food, and I want to tell
Yeah,
me about it.
definitely, you're right. Herbalism and food, really my all of my what I call herbal musings.
Mm.
So I do a lot of experiments with herbalism, and I just like to see different things. Like I'll take a plant and just say, I wonder if there's a difference between like how it tastes when I use it this way versus that way.
Ooh, I love that.
And so those kinds of things will also be on the blog, and of course recipes,
Mm.
and just my experiences going through this like life of herbalism and kitchen herbalism, and really wanting to share information in a place where I think people can grow to trust it as a trusted resource.
Mm.
There's so much misinformation right now, and now we have all these AI written herbalism books. So I'm like, I just want to have another place that people can come to with trusted information. One thing I'm gonna have on there is a resources page. So it's gonna have like books that I recommend or studies that I've recently read that I think would be cool for people to see, or herbalists that I recommend people follow. I
Mm.
think for someone on the outside looking in, it's hard to know like who is somebody to trust, right? I completely understand that if you're just coming into this and wanting to learn now, we know a lot of common names, Matthew Wood, Rosemary Gladstar, but to someone who is new to this, that might not be, their knowledge base for that. So
Mhm.
I think I just want to do my part in helping to counter that misinformation and also give people resources like this is what I do and how I practice, but also if you're interested in how other people practice, or if you're interested in learning about some of these other trusted herbalists, here's where you can go.
Mm. Oh, I love that, and it is so important, with the, all the AI books and everything, like, I look at those books and they look like such crap to me, and it's, like, so obvious that they're crap, and so I've kind of, like, I don't know, I've just been like, "Yeah, yeah, like, they exist, but they're, like, such obvious crap, it doesn't matter." Um, but the other day, I was with a friend, and he was like, "Hey, look, like, a friend of mine who's not an herbalist by any sense of the he's just kinda, like, maybe starting to get interest, had sent him a book and said, 'Hey, what do you think about this book?'" The author was Harvard, Stanford. Yeah, and, like, it was so obvious, like, that it was just a crap AI book, but wasn't obvious to his friend because his friend's not an herbalist, he's not in the herbal world, and it was just like what popped up on his feed or whatever, so it was just, like, the thing that was easiest for him to find, and he was like, "Hey, what do you think about this book?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah," like, for just regular folks out there who aren't doing deep dives into everything, like, these AI books are gonna come up really easily, and it's gonna be hard to tell them apart. Also, as we know, they're gonna get better and better. Like, these first kind of, like, total slop stuff is, like, can be pretty bad that you're just like, "Gross," and, like, they obviously just want the sale without any, like, follow through beyond that, but they're gonna get better and better, so it's important, that we're kind of maintaining the integrity of what is experience and, who do we go to for trusted information, so that's wonderful that you're gonna be adding to that.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. And I read someone's post the other day where they were sharing ways to determine like if this is an AI written book or not. And one of the things that I took away from that I'm gonna share with everyone when I can is research the author. um you know do they have other books? Do they have any like talks, or can you find a video of them speaking on a topic somewhere?
Mm,
Just really doing a deep dive on the author themselves to see like, is this the only thing that comes up with this person? Do they not have like a presence online?
mhm.
Those are some of the like red flags of, maybe this is not an actual herbalist trying to share their knowledge with other people, but maybe like something that was written by AI.
Yeah, yeah, good tip. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, before you go, Rebecca, I have a last question for you. Oh, actually, before we go, I will say we're going to put your the link to your blog in the show notes, and you also are on Instagram, so people can check you out there as well. But yeah, we'll be sure to hit up all of that in the show notes. We'll put easy links there for you. So thank you for that, and looking forward to yeah, your herbal musings, your recipes. Be lovely. So I do have one last question for you. And that question is, how has working with herbs changed how you see the world?
Hmm. I think it's done two things. One, it's brought me community.
Mm,
Um, being an herbalist helped me find a lot of other like-minded plant people, farmers, chefs. And I'm in Atlanta, where I'm really lucky because there's a really strong connection to buying from your local farmers, knowing
Hmm.
who they are, knowing what they grow, visiting the farms, even through volunteering with the clinic. Like I've just been able to find community and like-minded people in a way that I didn't expect when I started this journey. I just
That's
was,
cool.
a nerd who liked plants and wanted to research a bit more about them. And I think the other thing is it really helped me appreciate the seasonality of
Mm.
things. One of the main points of my plant of the month study is, where does it grow? Where is it native to? But also, when do you harvest it? All the different parts of the plant.
Mm.
Do you take the root in, fall, and then the leaves in spring, and then the flowers in the summer? Like appreciating the changes in the seasons, which was very important for me as someone who was getting used to cold weather when I first moved here.
Yeah.
Um, I tell people all the time when I first moved here and I was very not resistant to cold weather, but just I wasn't trying to embrace it at all. It felt like miserable cold weather. But then I started living seasonally and like doing things like what can I do in the fall that I can't do in April?
Mm.
What can I do in December that I can't do in June? And it's really made me enjoy each season
Mm.
now. And I think that's probably been another really big impact. Like I'm looking forward to fall because I want to go pick some apples, and looking forward to winter because I like that everything slows down and it really gives me a chance to, like, hibernate.
Yeah.
And so those are the two things that I think have really, really impacted me through my work with herbalism and how they've changed the way I see the world.
Oh my gosh, I love those. I resonate with them so much too. And I think that's like such the gifts of herbalism. Like so often we can start out just wanting to know like what herb works for what condition or whatever. And then it's like this constant unfolding of gifts beyond that. And the community aspect is so big. I mean, I feel like that's my main focus in life right now is like, what does that mean to be in community? How do we support each other? How do we look to the plants and like how they're in community and then recognize the greater community? Anyway, that's like my theme right now. So into that. And then the seasonal stuff, Rebecca, I grew up in the Southwest desert, so I also did not grow up around a lot of coldness and really struggled with that. I mean, I just hated it. Like it was so much like pushing away and just really not liking it and just being like, it's kind of like when someone first tastes bitter for the first time and they're just like, I hate it. It's like end of story, period, hate it, done. That's how I felt too. But it's just like how you described it is so true of just like, oh, like we can embrace, these changes and the plants just offer us so much, so many real things too, because sometimes this might be throwing shade a little bit, but sometimes like around the holidays it's like the things that people really love are like plastic shit. It's like, oh, like, plastic snow or plastic what, I don't know, it's just like fake stuff. And it's like for me, so sorry to throw shade at that, but for me it's like to actually like embrace like what is outside my door and to like look at the living world around me and take inspiration there. It's like it's just brought a lot more richness to my life that I truly enjoy.
Same, same. And when it does snow, I embrace it, because I live in a place where it doesn't snow often, but it is starting to snow a little bit more these last couple of years. I've been here for like 10, 11 years.
Oh
So
well.
things have definitely changed a little bit. But I think there was a time where I would not have embraced snow the way that I do now. And I love it now because when else would this happen? Of course, it's snowing in January, right? Because it's January and it's like exciting. And now I'm like, I'm going to make some hot cocoa and just sit and watch the snowfall or something like
Mm.
that. And these are little things, but it, like you said, there was just this pushing away in the beginning,
Mhm.
that I didn't realize was making me more miserable because I was just pining away for spring and summer
Yeah, yeah.
or wanting to go back home to Florida where I knew it was still relatively warm. But now I
Yeah.
appreciate where I am here.
Mm.
And it just really has opened up the way I see the world for sure.
Yeah. It's almost, yeah, such a wonderful embrace by the plants that just, yeah, welcoming. It's how we come home ultimately.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. I love
Yeah.
that. It's how we come home.
Yeah. It's been so lovely to get to know you. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate this. I loved hearing your story, hibiscus, these sharings. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me. I loved this, and I'm so happy to come back and talk about another plant that you might love that you haven't talked about
Awesome.
yet. I think,
I would love that.
yeah, we have so many in the Caribbean, so I'm always happy to talk plants.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. You can download your illustrated recipe card from today's episode. just head over to herbswithrosaleepodcast.com or check out the show notes for a link. And if you're not already subscribed, I'd love to have you as part of this herbal community so I can deliver even more herbal goodies your way. This podcast is made possible, in part, by our awesome students.
This week's student spotlight is on Kathy Thornton in Maryland. Kathy is a student in the Herbal Energetics course who brings curiosity, careful observation, and a deep appreciation for the plant she studies. Whether working with blue vervain, licorice, or nettle, she takes time to notice each herb through its flavors, aromas, and lived experience. She described harvesting nettle as an invitation to practice presence and mindfulness, and found meaningful ways to weave her learning into everyday life, from nourishing infusions and meals to sharing herbal knowledge with others. To honor her contributions, Mountain Rose Herb is sending Kathy a $50 gift certificate to stock up on their incredible selection of organically and sustainably sourced herbal supplies. Thank you so much to Mountain Rose Herbs for supporting our amazing students. And if you'd like to be an herbalist, you can check out my foundational courses at herbswithrosalee.com.
Okay, you've made it to the end of the show, which means you get a gold star and this herbal tidbit. Well, you may have noticed that partway through our conversation, when Rebecca was describing hibiscus as cooling and soothing and moving things along, I said, well, that's exactly how I work with linden. And that comparison isn't a coincidence, and I want to give you the botany behind it. So linden, Tilia is the genus, spent a long time in its own family, the Tiliaceae. And then there was some genetic work done, and it got moved along with most of that old family into the Malvaceae. So linden now sits alongside hibiscus and marshmallow, like all the mallows, globe mallow, my favorite, okra, and cacao. So they're all delightfully together in that mucilaginous bunch. And there's one more thread worth pulling here. Linden has also been a heart herb, especially in European practice. It's often used for easing blood pressure, and hibiscus has been studied along the same lines, and now there's a real body of research into this. For example, in 2022, there was a meta-analysis in the Journal of Cardiovascular Pharmacology, and what they did is they looked at 13 randomized controlled trials. There was 1,200 people enrolled in those trials altogether, and they found that hibiscus lowered both systolic and diastolic blood pressure compared to the placebo, on the order of about 7 points systolic and 4 diastolic. The effect was clearest in people with mild to moderate hypertension. So we've got two cousins from the opposite ends of the climate range, both of them turning towards the heart, both of them mucilaginous. And if this has you curious where else to look in that family, of course, marshmallow root is waiting right there for you. As always, thank you so much for joining me in this episode. I'll see you in the next one.